All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a great podcast today. Right before I get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. And real quick, and I can easily cut this part, it's no problem at all. Do you want to wear the VetLife t-shirt during the thing? He just used it for the pictures. Do you want to represent yourself regular? That's totally up to you.
I'm good.
Awesome, bro. So, all right, I'm going to introduce the guest, Jim Ayers. Did I pronounce that right, by the way?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I should have asked you before the podcast,
No
but,
problem,
you know, for the people that don't know you, let's start all the way back. Were you born and raised here in Michigan? What were you like as a young kid, as a young man? You know, what were the big influential things in your life? And let's start to create your story.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Great to be here, by the way. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Grew up in southwestern Michigan, so the earliest days of my life when I was younger was in Van Buren County on a little lake in southwestern Michigan, out in farm country, basically. In the middle of nowhere on a dirt road, right? That's my earliest memories. You know, that coming from that's kind of important given some of the stuff that I went through, because I went from that like insulated, isolated cocoon type existence to when I was 9 years old, my father died unexpectedly of a heart attack. He was 41 years old. And, that event just traumatized me for years. It was traumatic in a number of ways. Of course, first of all, his death, but then on top of that, we lost our home. My mom did have a job, thank goodness. She had an office job, but we couldn't afford to stay there anymore. So we had to sell our house. I always remember I had to give our dog away, which sounds like a stupid little thing, but when you're a kid, that's like really traumatic on top of other trauma. And we moved in with my grandparents, my mom's parents, in the inner city of Kalamazoo, Michigan. So that's how I got to Kalamazoo.
So really at an early age, your illusions get shattered because life is not supposed to do that to you. You don't as a kid, you're not supposed to have to go through that. You got mom and dad, You're growing up in the world. Like you said, you're in a small area,
right.
You know, like that, you hear about those crazy things when you're little, but you like never think that's going to come to you.
Right.
You know, now all of a sudden you get this huge shift. You're dealing with this reality of like, why did this happen? Who's to blame? Could something have been done?
Yeah.
Life is not fair.
Yeah.
Did God allow this? Like you go through all these questions, and I remember going through all those questions. And now you move into an inner city, which is another huge shock.
Yes.
You know, and I remember I'd moved schools, I think 5 times as a kid, and it's a shock every time, especially if you started to establish a little bit of a friendship, and then you add in trauma and depression or things like that, and now you get introduced to a whole new group of people, and you don't know how to articulate yourself at that age. You're not.
Right.
Most kids aren't great at connection, and now you're this kid that's experiencing all this pain and difficulty,
Absolutely.
thrown into a new environment. You know what I mean? So this probably lingered through a lot of those early school days. When did you feel like you started to have a little bit of hope for the future? Did that even happen in high school?
Not really. It was kind of these two different things going on inside of me at the same time. And I think life is often like that we have these opposing things within us. So on the one hand, I remember shortly after my dad's funeral, so I was 9 years old, and I remember telling my mom, and I was really emotional, and I said, I'm going to make my dad proud of me. And I never forgot that. And that was always in me. But for many years, kind of looking back on it now, I didn't realize it at the time, but I think it was the anger of that happening to me probably was a really, really big thing. And then the anger of not just the event itself, but the subsequent things that happened. And, it was, experiences like moving from, this farm country on a dirt road in southwestern Michigan to an inner city school in the late 60s. And that was 45% African American kids. Never seen a black kid before in my life. And it was in the late 60s, and it was another trauma for me. And not to, I don't want to make myself out to be a victim. I don't mean it that way. It's just that the experience of that was another trauma. I mean, I remember I got beat up like on a very, very frequent basis because I was the new kid, right? I'm in an inner city environment now, an integrated environment, which I did not know how to deal with, in a turbulent time. And, I literally I never thought about school. I never thought about classes. I never thought about learning. I literally would lay in bed at night and think, okay, what route am I going to walk to school tomorrow so I don't get jumped? And while I was in school, a lot of times I was thinking, what door am I going to go out of? What route am I going to get home without getting jumped, right? I mean, it consumed me. And so it hung on through elementary school, junior high, up into high school. One of the, I had several things along the way of the story that enabled me to find myself, is the way I think about it, enabled me to turn it around. And probably the first one was my mom, God bless her. And my mom passed away about 10 years ago now. But, she was always there for me. But one of the things that she did, and I don't know how she did it, but she scraped together the money to send me to a university prep elementary school just for 6th grade, right? And for that 1 year, it got me out of that environment that I was in, and I saw a different world, and I started seeing different possibilities. And when I got to that school, which was integrated, not as much as the one that I'd come from, but it was integrated some. But this was more like a prep school, like it was, you're supposed to be good in academics and all this stuff, right? And I was the bad seed kid, right, that would draw pictures of knives, and the teacher would rip it up and say, you can't do that here. I mean, but eventually I started building relationships there, and ultimately it got me to see a different potential future for myself. And it's probably one of the most important things my mom ever did for me, right? And unfortunately I never told her that, but that was, as I look back on it now, was a beginning. But, I was just in this mode of self-defeating behavior as a poster child for that. We do the aptitude IQ tests or whatever every year in school. Like all the time I'm at the top of the class and I'm just a complete screw up, right? I'll give you a good example of that. I think I was in 9th grade, so this was the last year of junior high when I was going to school then. And I got nominated, I guess by some teachers who may have seen some potential in me, because I was not a good student, to go to this kind of city, Kalamazoo City Junior High, kind of like organizational meeting, and they were going to form a Kalamazoo Junior High. There were, I think, 5 junior highs in Kalamazoo at the time. A kind of like student government thing, right? And I was one of the couple of people, 2 or 3 people from my junior high to get nominated to go to that. So I go to that thing, and I don't really remember much about it, but whatever we discussed, I must have spoken up and talked about things because they elected me the president of it. And this will tell you about where I was, though. So I get elected president of that, and they were meeting every month. I never went back. I never notified anybody that I didn't want to be on it. I just didn't go. My mom said, hey, you got to go catch the bus to go to this. I'd just go walking, and the bus would come by. I remember seeing the bus go by. I go, nah, I'm not doing that. And I just didn't do it. Self-defeating behavior. And that followed me through school, high school. I flunked out of high school, had to go extra to get a diploma. And it's just, complete lack of effort. And actually, the way I've come to think about it now is that, with the exception of sports, which was kind of another savior for me, the coaches that I had that pushed me and challenged me, that was the one place in my life where I did push myself and have success, and it kind of gave me a sense of worth. But aside from that, I failed at everything that I did. But now I realize it's because I wanted to, right? And you know, what kind of turned that around? Well, I did get you know, scholarship money to go to Grand Valley State University to play football. That's the one thing that I was decent at. And, you know, I blew that too. After the first year, my freshman year, I, you know, played football, but my GPA after the first year was 0.8. And I just never went to class, didn't give a damn, didn't do any of that. Got kicked out of college, lost my scholarship. And I went back home, another failure. And I actually got in hindsight, what was a great opportunity. Didn't seem that way at the time. I got a job at a gas station in the inner city of Kalamazoo. I got the job because they had been held up a week or two before. There was a robbery there, and one of the employees got shot. He lived, but he was shot, and he was recovering and everything. I got that guy's job. And this was like, you know, it's hard for me to explain the environment that was there, but I was working with, you know, guys that had been dishonorably discharged from the Army and stuff like that. And just as I was doing that spring, this would have been like May, June, that summer. And again, you know, you and I talked a little bit before about resilience and like what makes you, like what clicks, right? And I honestly can't say what clicked in me, but what came to me was, this is the bottom of my barrel. I cannot go any lower than this. And I'm better than this. And I have got to turn it around. And again, I can't explain where that came from, but it came to me. And because that other thing, like I said, I want to make my dad proud of me, or I want to make my mom proud of me, was always still there, but it was always pushed to the background. When that kind of clicked in me, that's when things started turning around for me. Maybe one of the miracles of my life, I reapplied to Grand Valley State that fall, and for some reason they let me back in, which I don't know what I'd have done if I didn't get back in, but I got back in. And I just went from the left side of the continuum of complete loser to the far right side, which is fanatical effort, nothing in between. And from that day that I went back that September, all through undergrad at Grand Valley State, through graduate school at Western Michigan, and my MBA at Davenport University, I never missed one class, not any. I just went, took notes, paid attention, and applied myself, right? And I got straight A's.
So seriously, in that switch, you became a completely different human being. Or a completely different. I'm shocked because you said, like, I don't really know what. I thought you were going to tell me some extreme final bottom, some you know, bottom of the barrel. You finally bounced off it, because that is an extreme shift. That is like from here, you know, 1% of the man that Jim Ayers can be, to now all of a sudden, not a slow process. You're hitting home runs. You're giving 100%. There wasn't a really clear defining moment in that.
No, you know, not that I remember. It was just, it might have been, you know, one thing that I do kind of remember. I can't say this was like the moment, but something that really did make me start realizing it was, this place was so seedy that this was a gas station and like a 7-Eleven store type thing. That wasn't a 7-Eleven, but kind of like that. We spent 2 hours every night before we could go home. We did 100% inventory every single day. Like, who does that, right? Every day. And I remember we hired this guy. He came in. He was one of the guys who got kicked out of the military. He came in, and I think it was his first or second night there. And the manager does the inventory. He's like, we're $20 short. Pull your pockets out. The guy's got a $20 bill in his pocket. And I'm just thinking, I remember looking at that going, like, how stupid are you?
So even if that's not the exact moment, in that moment, you were able to look at your environment, you were able to look at the people you were surrounded by, and you were like, this isn't actually me.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it. And kind of the thing the voice in my head is like, you're better than this, man, right? You're better than this. And you know, I kind of think I probably couldn't have verbalized it then, but I think what I realized is I'm not only letting down, you know, my parents and things, I'm letting myself down, right? And I have got to do better, and I got to get it together. And you know, I can't say why it went. The shift was so extreme, other than I've kind of discovered that it's a little bit of my personality, I guess. But I think I learned it through sports. If I could tell you a brief story, this is a turning point in my life. Hard to think of it that way with all the self-defeating behavior I had, but like I said, the athletic piece was the one place that I had success and I learned positive lessons from. So I was, would be like 8th grade football, I guess. And back then, I mean, this was a long time ago, man. Nobody had face masks other than one bar across your face. That's it.
I remember those old helmets. It looked just like this, one little bar, and you're like, what is that doing?
Yeah, that's what we had, right? And we practiced on a field, and it really didn't have much grass. It was mostly gravel type stuff, right? A lot of little stones and things like that, which will be important when I tell you what happened. So I'm like third string tailback at this point. I'm on the scrub squad in practice playing against the big first string guys, right? And I hadn't really hit my growth spurt yet. I wasn't very big. I just remember running play into the line, and like my third string offensive linemen were like nowhere to be seen. They dissolved someplace, and I got these two big giant, which to me at the time were giant, starting defensive tackles. I run right into them. They basically picked me up, turned me around, and face planted me into the gravel. And that single face bar ended up down on my chest, and my face was just, I got up, and you know, I got pebbles in my face, my nose was bloody, my lips were bloody. But here's the thing, my reaction to that, again, another thing I can't explain, but I became enraged. Not to where I wanted to fight those guys, but that I was like fanatical effort enraged. And I remember going back to the third string scrub huddle, pull my face back up, and just yelling at my teammates and saying, like, are we going to take that? I mean, you know, I was just pissed off. And I'm like, I was fanatical the rest of that practice. Like, you know, you're not going to beat me. And I did it the next day, and I did it the next day, and I did it the next day. And what happened was, unbeknownst to me, 2 weeks later, I was the starting tight end. And what I realized was, and this is a lesson I never ever forgot, was I made them put me on the field through my effort. Didn't have the most talent, but effort. And, you know, I never forgot that day. I never forgot that lesson. It stuck with me. I mean, in college, I wasn't the biggest guy in college. I think I probably played, one of those people played a little bit above my talent. But every day, if practice was at 5 o'clock, I was in the locker room an hour and a half, 2 hours ahead of time, literally psyching up for practice like it was a game every single day. And you know, my goal was not to be the best on a team. My goal was to be the best I could be, and I always strove. I had this idea in my head that I want to have a perfect practice and I want to play a perfect game, and I never did either one probably, but that's every day. That was my thing. Like, I'm going to hit every block. I'm going to do everything all out. I'm going to be the first guy in line. Right? And that worked for me in football. And in fact, when I got back into school, not only did I go to class and got the grades, but you know, I got my football scholarship money back just through, I think, fanatical effort, right? And just having that attitude. And that attitude, you know, paid big dividends to me in my career, my business career and everything. Coming from where I came from, I had a wonderful career at Amway Corporation in Grand Rapids.
I don't want to jump to that yet because you've
Okay.
you've dropped too much gold on this
Okay,
interview.
okay, go.
You've talked about so many points that are incredibly powerful. Like, I mean, just the fact of being trapped in a vicious cycle for a long period of time. You were in a cycle of survival. You were in a cycle of you weren't trying to be the best student you could. You're trying to survive. You're trying not to get your ass whooped every day.
Right.
You know what I mean? You were in a vicious cycle, and when you're hurt and then there's more hurt and you're trapped in a certain environment, what a lot of these, like, I work with a lot of struggling youth from the court systems and things like that.
Yeah.
What these kids don't see is like their perception of the world is a very, very small, it's a drop in the bucket of what the world actually is. But if you're surrounded by it and you're consumed by it and your school is like that and this is like that and work environment is like that, to you that is the world. And that's what exists, right? So it's very hard to be on the come up when everything you see is kind of keeping you at that level. But then you said you finally hit that point where you looked around and you're like, no, I'm above this level. You mentioned that you've had a high IQ. Like, it was almost like the kid that had struggled with pain and hurt and damage. You had to re-find who Jim Ayers was before that stuff happened. The young, capable, vibrant kid that was ready to take on the world, right? So, like, I think there's a major lesson in there for people that are stuck in a vicious cycle, that it's like, you could be just where you are now. That doesn't mean the world has to stay like that. That's your current circumstance. But if you can re-tap into the potential that exists within yourself, that, like you said, that you found on the football field that day.
Yeah, right.
You didn't find anything new. You didn't acquire new talent. You all of a sudden didn't get better at running plays. You re-tapped into the spirit of potential within yourself, and you said, you know what? I'm going to bring this thing onto the field with me,
Right.
and it's going to help me.
Right.
And I think if more people realize that, like, if your environment is terrible and you might not be able to change it at the moment, you can still find the things within yourself to at least bring the best version of yourself to the table. Because even if you're in the shittiest environment out there, if you can show up every day better, your effect will have ripples on the area and the people around you, just like it did with your football team. Now all of a sudden they're going, man, maybe we make this guy a starter. Next thing you know, a coach, I can tell you as a coach, will look at someone like that and go, I'm going to make that person a captain. And they're going to lead by example. When I see people outworking other people on the mats, even if they're the most tired because they've been pushing the hardest, I'm like, all right, you're sprint team leader today. You're leading all the sprints. You have to pick the number that the team does. And now all of a sudden they have the pressure of like, I am the most exhausted person in the room, but I just made them the leader because I see that effort. You know what I mean? So I think there's really powerful lessons there. And then something else that I had wrote down that I thought was really shocking was when you got elected president into that school organization. And it's almost like, do you feel like you didn't feel worthy of that yet, so you couldn't step into that role? Or what kept you, something kept you away from it? What kept you away?
It's not the way I remember it is I felt that it was almost kind of natural that I was in that role. So I believed in myself that I was good enough and I could do it, and it didn't surprise me and it didn't shock me, but I didn't want to be successful. I wanted to fail. I didn't want anybody telling me how great I was. I didn't want success.
Well, that might be because you're not ready to be worthy yet. Why aren't you able to be told that you're worthy? Why aren't you able to be told you are the president? You're successful. You know what I mean? That might be tapping into that, like, hey, don't shine a good light at me yet because I'm not the good Jim Ayers yet.
I'm not ready.
Exactly.
That's for sure.
Like, I'm not ready to step into that light yet.
That's absolutely right.
So then you get back into Grand Valley State. I'm loving this story. Like, I love the fact that, you went back to the same location.
I did.
You got given another chance.
Yeah.
Now you go back there and you're killing it. You're on the ball. You're reinventing yourself to the world. You're recreating the relationships. At this time, how do you have kids at the time? Do you have a family? Do you have a girlfriend? Do people see this change, or are you kind of just a man on a mission at this point in your life? And then let's start to talk about the results that came from this new version.
Yeah, so man on a mission is a good way to put it. I just remember being that whole lesson that I said from 7th or 8th grade football, whatever it was, of fanatical effort. And I was just determined I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to blow it. I'm not going to blow it this time. And I mean, again, just I did stuff that I look back on now like, really, did I do that? So back then, yeah, because I'm older, it was cassette tapes. I didn't just take notes. I recorded every damn class I went to. And then I'd sit there at night and listen to it over again and redo my note. I mean, I was just totally fanatical.
Just an extremist to the fullest, because
Yes.
you had been here and you said, okay, I need to make sure that I never end up back there.
Exactly.
So you went to the, probably unhealthy. It's all you did, but it provides the results, right? You said something just a moment ago that won't get out of my head, where you literally said, I failed because I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
That line right there, if people in their lives that are struggling and, maybe they've been crushed by pain, by trauma, by loss, by heartache, by heartbreak, all these things, if they could look in the mirror and say, am I failing because I deep down in my subconscious, I want to, because I'm hurting, I haven't worked through the pain, that is huge, man.
Yeah.
So maybe you rebounded so far because you had spent this amount of time at this low version, and you remember that 9-year-old boy that's like, I'm going to make my father proud.
Absolutely.
You're now trying to be that man.
Absolutely.
So now you're on the come up. You're crushing it in college. Did you get a job while you're in college? Let's start to create your professional story.
I still didn't I didn't turn it around and become super successful right away. But I was going to class. I was getting all those really good grades. I did have part-time job as well. I think it was a university job that I did. It was my first marriage. Got married. Had a daughter. I started, and this was, I look back on these things actually, James, as I see the blessing in all of them, because all those ingredients kind of made me who I am, essentially. So I don't regret any of it. Really, it just is. It is what it is.
You wouldn't be the man you are today, be able to affect the world the way that you can, giving off the energy that you do, had you not gone through these things.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I got my degree. I got out of Grand Valley State, but because of my history and my GPA and stuff, I was kind of limited in my job opportunities. But I had a science degree, so I got a job at Amway Corp as a hourly lab technician. It was the lowest level there in research and development that you could get in at, and I worked in the lab as an hourly employee for, I guess, not quite a year. I got promoted to a higher level of that, and then within a year after that, I got promoted to salaried chemist, and I kind of was on my way. I will
real quick, not to interrupt you, but. So you're starting to succeed professionally because you got a job going. You're starting to build the ladder, but a lot of the times professional growth and character growth don't always align. And you still have all that pain in your past, and you still have all that hurt. And a lot of times, hurt people in your personal life. Had you gone through the character development yet? Have you really brought the best version of Jim out yet?
No, and I was just kind of talk about that a little bit in two aspects actually. So. One aspect was at work. I started having success. I became a chemist, and then I got promoted from that, and then I became a group leader, and I got into management, but it just kind of started happening for me. But, one of the things I look back on and just kind of I wouldn't say, well, I'm not proud of it, but it is what it is, was I realized my drive at that point from a character standpoint was still in football, 100% competition. And that's about, I'm going to win because I'm going to beat you, right? And I was doing that at work. I wanted to basically beat my employee competitions for that job. And I remember looking at my boss's job and thinking in my head, in 2 years, I'm going to have your job, right? Not in my opinion, a healthy way to be your best, right? So that aspect was one. The second one was just my demeanor, my moods. I was still very moody. My nickname of all the guys that I lived with in college was Mean Streak. We all had nicknames. Mine was Mean Streak, which is not a good nickname to have in hindsight. So, a wonderful thing. I had my daughter with my first marriage, but my first marriage didn't make it. And, there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of them was just that I hadn't had that character development yet, right? And after that, I went through that and was a single dad for a couple of years with my daughter. And then I met and married Nancy when my daughter was 3, and Nancy and I now have been together 35 years, and that was when you think about the character development between my daughter being born, meeting Nancy and marrying her, and then Kyle, her son, coming into my life, that was for me a trigger that I would say, yeah, that's when I started approaching my best self from a character standpoint. And my whole paradigm changed. I stopped chasing a bigger house. I stopped chasing a better car. I stopped chasing more money. And I started caring about my family. And that's when I first actually, within, a year or so of that all happening and marrying Nancy, I first started getting involved in the community. And now I'm like, that's most of what I do now. But it all started back then. So that was like the second piece of the transition. Was the first piece was effort to succeed and really be my best self from an effort standpoint. The second piece was, like you said, from a character standpoint, and that was probably when that happened. And when those two things came together and my family came together, that's when my career and everything else just took off.
I'm not shocked at all. So that was about to be what I was going to comment on. I was going to say, when you found that love with Nancy and your daughter, and now all of a sudden you're reflecting on your life a little bit, and you got this area together, but now you got to find the man that you were before the pain. And now when you combine that, that's the recipe for success, because then you're going to give out your best self to the world. You know what I mean? Because there's some people running around this world that are doing well professionally that have not gone through the character growth at all, and they could be heading for disaster still. Right. And really, when we're able to get the multifaceted aspects of being a human being and go like, man, okay, we're getting on track now. That's usually when you skyrocket. So you have your family. Where are you living at the time, by the way? I never even asked, because you moved out of Kalamazoo, you're living in Grand Rapids?
I came up to Grand Rapids to be at Grand Valley State and stayed there, so
okay.
I never left.
So you're in Grand Rapids, you're with Amway, you're exploding through the ranks, you get married to Nancy. Let's start to talk about, because you become the president of Amway, which is $1 billion company, right?
No. I became the president of Amway North America, which is $1 billion company. Amway's about $8 million total. So,
but that's still, from, like you said, the lowest level employee that got hired in to the president of North American Amway. It's probably still even a shock when if you would have gone back to the first young man, Jim, that got hired in and said, hey, you're going to be the president of the North American operations of this company. It'd been like, wait, what?
Yeah, everybody would have been that.
Yeah. But you had that drive. You had that fire. The same kid that got up off his face in athletics and said, you know what, I'm going to put the effort back out, is the same man that drive carried you there. But let's start to craft that story. And as you get into the executive level and stuff, how did your life change? How did the responsibility change? Did you ever get to the point where you started finding gratitude for the new life that you have? A lot of times I find that people that come from pain, once they do start to get it together, they have they start living through gratitude. They start wanting to help other people. When you feel better in your life, you start being like, you know what? I remember what it feels like to be like that in life, and I don't want to see other people like that. So I'm going to try to make their life better. Yeah. Did you experience these things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as I kind of moved up after that point, it became less about me. Like I said, I didn't focus on the next big thing or the next job or more money. I actually went back to the focus I had in sports and athletics in high school and in college, which is, I'm not going to worry about all that. I'm just going to be the best I can be every darn day and give max effort and be the best me. And then whatever happens, happens. And so, and again, I think that's another key, because that's when I really took off as well, right? Because I think that's, for me, the best focus. And I will tell you, of all the increases in responsibility that I had in my career, I didn't look for really any of them. They just came to me unexpectedly. Almost all of them unexpectedly.
It's funny. The same reason that when you said your third string, and it's not like you walked out and asked for something. When you put out that energy and you started showing up and just giving your best effort, what happened? You were the person that became first string and you were selected. Right. It's the same. It's the parallel thing. It's the same thing. Yeah. So as soon as you started exuding the best version of yourself, these opportunities came to you. Some people call this manifesting reality. Some people call this the law of attraction. No matter what, the truth is, when you give your best, you get a better response from the universe or people around you.
Yeah, and the lesson I think of that for me, and that I would tell others about is, a lot of people fall into the trap of self-criticism. I'm not good enough. That person's better than me. That person's got this. I don't. Well, that person's at that level. I'm not. And kind of what I learned through this whole thing is stop thinking about all that. It's all just bullshit. It doesn't mean anything. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about them. Worry about yourself and push yourself to be the best you can be, right? And if you just do that, the rest of it takes care of itself, right? And you know, that's kind of what I learned through all that. But as I kind of went through my career and just had more and more success, I did go, and I had advantages. I certainly have been privileged, in spite of my background. I've been privileged in a lot of ways. I've been lucky. I've had some great coaches. I've had some great mentors. I've had people that took chances on me and gave me opportunities that I'll never forget. And, you know, so this wasn't, I don't want to paint the picture like this was just this wonderful roses trajectory. There's a lot of bumps and failures along the way and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I'll tell you one story which kind of illustrates some of the help I had. I had been in research and development for my whole career. At that point, it was probably 20-some years, I guess, probably. And I'd reached the level of manager. And I just was like going through the motions. I had kind of lost, I felt I was losing my edge. And I didn't have a good work environment. I didn't really respect my boss, which is always difficult. It was one of those kind of tough times in my career. And I must have been complaining about it all the time and not even knowing it, whining about it. Because what happened one night, and Nancy, I will tell you, my wife Nancy, she retired early to take care of grandkids, but she is a very, very accomplished person, opposite of me. I flunked out of high school. She was valedictorian. I mean, right? Opposites attract.
Me and my girlfriend are polar opposites in so many ways, but they attract.
But, you know, Nancy was nothing she ever sought, but she ran a manufacturing company. She was on the 50 most influential women in West Michigan list, blah, 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 all that stuff, which you would hate the fact that I just said that. But, you know, so she was that person. So one night, and our kids were little, I remember I came home, and I think Nancy had gotten home from work, and she was making something for dinner. And I guess I was whining and complaining again. I didn't really, and she just stopped what she was doing. She turned around and looked at me, and she said, "Listen, I'm tired of hearing about it. Do something about it or shut the F up." And I just remember, like, stopped me in my tracks, right?
And you could have taken that one of two ways. It could have been like anger, resentment, blah, 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 or she just challenged you. She just called you out.
I think within 2 weeks I was in an MBA program. Got my MBA, and that was a trigger point for me to become an executive, and not because of the degree, but all the stuff that I learned. I expanded out of this science bubble that I was in into business and leadership because I got into that MBA program at Davenport University, and I got my MBA there. So that was another one of those little pivot points in life, right? And how lucky am I that I had a coach like that who, I think loving somebody and caring for them does not mean that you just always want to make them feel good. If you really love somebody and care about them, oftentimes one of the most important things you do is to tell them the bald-faced truth. Even though they'll hate it, they won't like it, they might feel hurt by it. If you love them, you tell them it. And that's what she did for me. And that was one of those points, man.
And honestly, if they can overcome the barrier, obstacle, whatever it is, and get to the other side, they'll be so appreciative and thankful. Like the man that sits here today, is like, thank God she said that to me and pushed me like that and challenged me. Whereas in the moment, it might have been like, wait, what? You know what I mean? And the brain wants to justify all those things, all the reasons we should complain and all the things that are out of our control and da-da-da. When really at the end of the day, you sitting here now goes, wait a second, I'm always in control of my setting. And if I had lost a little bit of spark or purpose, it's my responsibility to find a way to challenge myself.
That's right.
But it's like you fall into complacency, right?
Yeah.
And Nancy said, listen here, bro, get your shit together. You know what I mean? And that's awesome. You almost need that. I think the best coaches do that.
Yeah.
The best coaches really have to drop a hammer on you from time to time, and it might hurt, and it might be uncomfortable. Like the girl that's the world champion here that I was telling you about, probably 4 or 5 times throughout our relationship together, which has been almost 6 years now I've been training her, she has been like, like pissed at me because I'll like call her out on something and she'll be mad about it, whether it's in her personal life or something. And, she'll fight back and she'll lash back out at me. And then 3 months later, she's like, I really appreciate you having that talk with me. And like, now I'm back on track.
Exactly.
We need those people in our lives.
That's
Those are powerful moments. You know what I mean? It's that challenge, that same challenge when you got knocked on your face. You could have walked off the field.
Right.
You could have said, I'm hurt.
Yep.
I'm done.
Yep.
But you had that fire, and that fire brought you to this point.
That's right. And I was willing to stoke that fire and let it out, basically, right, as opposed to covering it up. The other big point of that, though, too, that experience that I can't gloss over because I think it's really important is, so not only did she give me that coaching, but then she backed it up. And actually my whole family did. So Kyle, I don't know, Kyle might have been 15, something like that.
What timeline is this that you go back to school for your MBA?
This was, I got my MBA in 2000. So Kyle, I want to say it was like 15, 16, and Bethany was probably about 12, 12, 13, something like that. And all of them in their own way supported me doing this because I had a job. This was an accelerated MBA program, 17 months, so it was crash and burn. And, I couldn't have done it successfully without my family being in it with me and, everybody helping me through that and accommodating me.
So let's talk about, from what I can understand and what I'm hearing on the other end of the podcast, is you were almost an employee mindset still, or you didn't really stretch that envelope to the man that you could have become yet. And then you hit the MBA program. What about it changed you? Was it being in the environment and realizing you could handle it? Was it just, because it sounds like throughout your life, when you get to a setting and you apply yourself, you're able to dominate. You're able to do well. Was it just getting yourself out there and being like, I can do this too, just like I did that? What was it about the MBA thing that opened that door for you?
Yeah, so remember walking into the door of that, and that was a cohort program, meaning I did the whole program with the same roughly 20 people. And a number of them very accomplished. One of the students was the top brain surgeon at Spectrum Health. And he was tired of treating disease. He wanted to create a health, like a health center to prevent disease. And so that's why he was in the program. But then I had other people who were executives at companies and things like that. I was super intimidated. I'm a science guy. I don't know anything about this. And it was a business leadership track, was the specialization of the MBA. And what I learned from that pretty early on was I can hang with this. I can do this, right? And I started seeing the potential in myself, and I started really believing that I had the potential to do this. And, one of the things, one of my profs, and unfortunately I can't even remember his name now, but I'll never forget, that he kept me after class. He was a marketing guy. It was a marketing strategy class or something, and he grabbed me after class, and it was weird. He said to me, hey, I want you to know, you got the potential to lead a company someday. And I was just like, say what? But I'll never forget that he said that, and it kind of got in my head, right, that he believed that, and he told me, you got the potential to lead a company. And I was like, I didn't know how to take that, but I never forgot it. And I started allowing myself to see the potential in it and believe that if I really push myself, and again, it wasn't about the level or leading. It was back to just make the biggest difference you can, right? And you talk about kind of getting out of just that work career mode to like the other stuff. Yeah, that started when Nancy and I got married, and I started with Michigan Special Olympics, just volunteering. Our kids got involved. Nancy got involved. I did that for 30 years, actually. And evolved through that organization, eventually became the chair of Michigan Special Olympics for a number of years. But that was the first step. But then as I kind of got to the exec level at Amway, and as I got older and as our kids aged, and now we've got grandkids and everything, it's just, I start looking at my purpose a heck of a lot differently. And it was kind of a gradual thing. And now that I'm retired, and self-employed, and I'm just all in on that's my purpose every day. And I kind of, one of the things I've kind of got to over the years is what's your purpose, and like why do you get out of bed every day, right? And for me now, and it's probably been the last 20 years, it's evolved more and more and more of, what can I do to make a difference, to help somebody in some way. And, one of the things that I've learned that I think is important, especially for maybe those people that, like you said, who you're in a spot where you're struggling or you're doubting yourself, it's hard to often have the right thoughts in your head because you're kind of blinded by all the stuff that's swirling around you. But, what I would hope that people realize at some point and understand, because I think it's a powerful truth in life, is I've kind of come to see the truly incredible potential that each and every one of us has to make a difference in somebody's life, or in our communities, but especially in somebody's life. I couldn't tell you, just like I remember that professor who told me, hey, you could run a company someday. In the last, especially probably the last 10 years, I had so many times when some young person comes up and we're talking, and they said, I'll never forget what you told me that day. And I'm like, well, I don't remember that. What are you talking about? Don't you remember you said, and they tell me, and I'm like, that's pretty good. Like, I don't remember that. I was just talking. But, it got me to understand that every single interaction we have with anybody, and I'm talking a 5-second interaction, can impact, the other person in a positive way or a negative way, depending on what it is. Sometimes you never know the person you walk by that's in a bad place, and you smile at them and just send them a quick message that, like, you're worth something, and you might turn somebody around, right? You might turn somebody around.
That one professor saying to you, you know what, you could lead a company one day. There was a doorway in your mind. I believe with consciousness, it's always been there. It's just you never looked at that door. Or maybe you briefly thought that it might be there, but then when he said that, you're like, can I do that? Yeah. Am I capable of that? Well, if this man believes in me and he's a professor at this, maybe I can. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, like you said, giving to others can have such a tremendous impact. And then by him giving to you, now makes you want to give to others, because now you have a way bigger impact. Right. And now how many lives will you influence that then will influence others? So, like, people need to realize we are way more powerful than you think.
Exactly.
And your interactions matter.
Yep,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Your interactions matter. And I think when you do that, it gets back to the feeling of, like, I matter. And then when you recognize, when you wake up in the morning, what you do matters, it's empowering.
Yeah.
Because then you're actually conscious of it, right? You're not just going through the day, whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like you said, that I think that way too. I'm only in my early 30s, but I'm like, you know what? If I see someone that I can tell on their face, they might even be having a rough time, I make it a point to either say hello or smile at them or like wave at something, and I can literally see it light them up a little bit.
Exactly right. The potential is huge. And, unfortunately, a lot of people might even listen to this and they're like, well, yeah, it's easy for you to say that, but I'm working 2 part-time jobs to try to make it, enough to buy food. And that's back to what you were talking, about, of kind of where I was when I was younger, of when you're in that spot, you're just trying to survive. And, right, it's tough to think about anything else because you are just trying to survive. But I will say one of the things I've learned, because I have dealt with people that I know and loved ones who have battled depression and things like that. I think that one of the best drugs to help get you out of that spot is helping somebody else.
There is no question about that, for sure. When you can bring us, even if maybe you can't bring happiness in your life at your current state, I've been there. I've been to the point where you just feel empty and depressed. But if you can give a little bit to somebody else and you see that in them and they're like thankful for your existence, that does fill you back up.
It does.
So you think you're giving out energy, but you're actually starting to fill yourself back up.
That's right.
And another thing I think that's amazing about your story and why you're able to be who you are is you remember just the young kid that has gone through all these things, that has expanded his mind, that learned to grow, that learned to get up off his face, that opened doorways of possibility. So when you're on this end now and you're retired and you're giving to others, you can speak from a place of like, I wasn't given a silver spoon and independently wealthy and given all these opportunities. I had to find something within myself through the pain, through the vicious cycles, through the self-defeating behavior to then create who I became. So once you do that, you look at another human being and you go, you can do that.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Just like that professor looked at you and said, you can run a company one day. That's what you're doing now. You're going, hey, what is your dream? What are your goals? What are the reasons that you don't believe that you can accomplish that? Yeah. You know what I mean? And you've mentioned one word over and over and over that has been my favorite word since I started on the journey to try to create this. And it's possible.
Yeah.
I used that, man, when I was a kid teaching in a basement. I was telling people one day I'm going to own this mega facility and people from all over the world are going to come here. People probably thought I was a lunatic. Like the people that train, they're like, yeah, sure you are. At the time, I'm an amateur competitor. I'm not even a professional. And they're like, yeah, like you're going to run the most. But I believed it was possible. And that possibility, the way I try to frame it to kids that, especially your younger people that are struggling or even adults, if you create a future that you desire so much and like a person that you want to become, a place you want to get to, just a vision of the future that you desire, that will pull you towards it if you start believing that it's possible. Because you're going to be like, if this is my existence now and it's possible that I could get to there, the same way that you said, is it possible that I can run my own company? Is it possible that I can do these things? If you believe that, your spirit will be like, I'm going to achieve that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we're able to empower people by that message.
Yeah, and the key to me too with that is that, my question is, are you doing it in the right way? And I'm back to my example. If I'm fixated on that goal and I'm not going to be happy till I get that goal, that is not the way to live, and you will not be successful. That's where I want to get to. But how am I going to get there? By being my best every day. And if you focus on that, not only are you more likely to get there, you'll become better every day, and you'll enjoy the journey, because life is not a destination, it's a journey.
1,000%. And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a secret to people that are struggling with happiness. The real happiness is found in the struggle or the journey to the destination, not the end result.
Exactly.
It's in that character growth, the lessons you learn, the people that you impact, the people that impact you. That is the real magic. Yeah. That's when you're looking back and going like, man, there's some beautiful moments to this life if I'm giving my best. And there's a huge separation between professional development and character development. And you got to be honest with yourself and look in the mirror, like, are you someone that you're proud of? Because even if maybe you are climbing the corporate ladder and making more money, or maybe you're making a lot of money taking advantage of people. Maybe you're making a lot of money, but you're doing something that you're not connected with. Now at some point, people usually crash and burn if you're good people, and now you're going to have to go through the character development. It's going to be super uncomfortable. But like you said, if you're giving your best every day and you're analyzing your relationships and the way that you're treating the people around you, now all of a sudden you're actively working on both. Yeah. So one thing I want to ask you about now, because you've climbed, you've been up and down, you've gone through loss, do you do anything now that keeps your mind like in the right place and in the world that we live in now? Like last year we had the pandemic, we have all this social media. Or have you gotten to a place where the happiness radiates enough from within you that kind of regardless of what's going on, regardless of what storm you're in, you stay in like a healthy mindset?
Boy, that would be nice maybe, but no, it's not reality for me. No, I am, hey, I don't care how old my kids get and they got a problem, I'm feeling it in my gut, man, right? Or Nancy, or our grandkids or whatever. My 3-year-old granddaughter just had, turns out to be just a stomach virus, but my stomach was in a knot for 3 days. I mean, those things all still affect me, but I'm back to what's my, like,
Yeah, all I'm really meant with that question, because it would be, if you were detached from emotion, that would be strange. That would be like, you're like, I became a sociopath while climbing the corporate ladder. No, I meant more like, do you have practices that you do? Like, do you meditate? Do you
Oh, yeah,
do you work out? What are the things you do that helps keep the mind on track? That's more of what I meant.
yeah, I got you. So, I have several practices that I do on a regular basis. One of them is called the Power of Five, which is something that I learned, maybe 12 years ago, I guess. I saw somebody talk about this from stage, and I started doing it the next day, and I've done it every day since. So here's the Power of Five starts with just a stupid little mind story. So here's the deal. Imagine that you are in the redwood forests of the Northwest, up in Oregon, Washington, and you're in a redwood forest, and you've been given a task that you have to complete, is that you have to chop down a redwood tree, and all you're given is an axe. That's it. Well, most people, you would look at the tree, 20 feet wide, you'd look at that axe and you'd go, this is stupid, I'm not going to do this. You throw the axe down, you walk away, you never come back. Power of Five says, you know what? Regardless of what you think, pick the axe up and hit the tree 5 times. And then you can put the axe down and go about your day. But you know what? Tomorrow, come back, pick the axe up, hit it 5 times, go about your day. Do it 3rd day, 4th day, 5th day. Just keep coming back, pick up the axe, and just hit it 5 times. If you do that long enough, that tree will fall over.
And that's a metaphor for your goals. The biggest goal you have in the world, it's not going to happen overnight. Most likely, it's not going to happen overnight. But if you keep chipping away at that thing, like you said, 5 shots a day.
So here's the deal then. So what are the premise is, okay, whatever your goal is, whatever it is, and it's different for every person, what are the 5 things that you can do every single day that will get you to your goal? And, for me, so I formulated this, like I said, probably 12 years ago, when I thought about it, and I'm like, what's my big goal? It's not getting a degree or something. I've done all that. It's how can I be in the positions I'm in? How can I be the absolute best leader I can be? Number 1, for my family, best father and husband. Number 2, for my work, and number 3, for my community. How can I be my best leader, my best self? And so for the 5 things that I do, and I have a book that I write down every day. The 5 things that I do every day is I exercise every day, I read every day, and I don't mean emails. I read every day, so I think that mental gymnastics, and as I said, I work out every day. I make myself intentionally learn something every day, which means I capture it and I realize I learned it, and I write down what I learned today, something different. Because I think there's tons of things to learn around us all the time. We just don't recognize them. So I'm looking for those, right? Keeps me learning. The 4th thing is I encourage at least one person every day about something, right? And I write down who did I encourage and for what. And then the last thing is every single day I do a little thankfulness exercise. I write down every day, what am I thankful for today? And sometimes it's like that beautiful sunrise I saw this morning. Sometimes it's the health of one of my grandkids. It's Nancy, whatever it is. But I set for a minute, maybe 2, and I just think about all the, blessings I have. Like, what am I thankful for? And those 5 things, do them every day. I admit, I combine the Saturday and Sunday so I don't have to work out every day, and so I can mix the days a little bit. But I try to stay true to that. And on the days when I don't, and there are some days when something happens and I can't do all of that. Yeah, it bugs me that I got one of those that's blank that I didn't fill in today. That bugs the heck out of me, right? So it keeps me. That's one of the things that I do that I think keeps me sharp on just every single day, trying to be my best, right? And practices that I have, to be my best.
100%. You're keeping yourself in a growth mindset. You're keeping yourself in a place of gratitude and growth and realizing your power. Like, hey, I will affect the world today. Is it going to be positive or negative?
Right.
You know what I mean? I will affect my mental health today. Will it be positive or negative? My physical health. You're actively seeking to always be in a state of growth.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. The Power of Five, I had never heard of that, but that's really excellent.
Yeah, I love it. And then another thing that I do is, and I got this from the Human Performance Institute, which is national now, but headquartered in Orlando. I went there a couple of times, and I'm a big fan of them. Anybody wants to Google them and check them out? Human Performance Institute, HPI. Now owned by Johnson & Johnson, I believe. But they started as a world-class tennis training facility, graduated to other big pro athletes, NFL guys, all kinds of stuff. And then they had this epiphany. To me, it's a really powerful concept that people that have big corporate jobs have the same needs from a mental, spiritual, and physical standpoint as world-class athletes do. And so they created this program called the Corporate Athlete, which I went through once by myself, took my team there once. And actually, Nancy, my wife, went through it after I did just because we thought it was so cool. I learned a lot of lessons. I'll tell you, two of them. One big one was, I was brought up to manage my time, all right? Figure out your day, manage your time. And they flushed that in the first day. Like, you don't ever think about that. You manage your energy. Right, your energy, and a good example of that is, if you're a parent and you've got kids, you're going to spend an hour with your kids, but you're checking your phone, you're doing your email, blah blah. Like, is that, or would it be better for you to spend a half hour with them, but the phone is gone and you are all in, connected? That's managing energy, not managing time, right? And I think that's a super powerful concept, which I try to remember and live by. All the time. The other thing that they made me do, because they do this in the program, is you look at these different aspects. It's spiritual, mental, and physical. And I mean, they get into stuff that I'm sure you're into here with your training facility, but you actually get into the biology of where does your energy come from? Well, it comes from what you put in your mouth, right? So drawing all those connections, right, between those three things, spiritual, physical, and mental. But you do a mission for yourself. And for them, it's like a 6-week mission. And then you write yourself a note about that. You get it in the mail 6 weeks later. Well, maybe because I am a little fanatic about some things sometimes, I took that concept and I changed it back when I first started going. Every day since, I write down a mission every day. I start every morning with a mission for today. And sometimes that's an objective thing that I want to accomplish today. But more often than that, it has anything to do with that. It has to do with, it might be, I've got a meeting this afternoon, and I don't like the topic. There's 2 people in the meeting that irritate the heck out of me. I'm not looking forward to this. I'm already getting negative, and I'll write down mission. Stay positive thinking today, positive mental attitude, and positive energy today, right? And I'm not kidding. I'll be in that meeting and I can start feeling it, turn back, look at my book, positive energy today, man, I'm back on track, right? So those things, so probably the 3 things that I say are the biggest to keep me on track: the Power of 5 I described, really thinking about my energy and managing my energy, and then being mission-oriented. And what's my mission today, which I translate now into, because it's changed for me. I'm retired. I retired at the end of 2020, which was a huge life change for me. So, but I still got to be, when I get out of bed in the morning, what's my purpose? What am I doing today? Like, what's the point, right? And what am I going to accomplish?
That's actually where I wanted to go next, is like, as a man who's had a very successful career, you've built a successful family, you've really experienced a wide spectrum of life, which is a beautiful life. You know what I mean? I feel like
I'm blessed.
As weird as it is, like pain and suffering and sadness and everything, make life more beautiful because you can remember what that is like. Yeah. So it gives you such an appreciation for this side. So you've had an awesome life. What do your goals look like now? Like what is the thing that gets you out of bed today? Is it just being the best father and husband and energy into the community? Do you have specific goals laid out there? You're like, listen, I'm working on this organization or this cause or this effort. But just like as a man that's really triumphed in life from the ground up, what would you say your current goals are?
Well, first is And I will say I'm a big believer in, and maybe it's a little anal to think this way, but I did a personal mission statement 4 years ago, and I did a personal value statement at the same time, and they're in my bag in my car right now. They haven't changed, and I get them out periodically and look at them, which I think is, for me, it just reminds me.
It's a compass.
It's a compass, and for me, that's like fundamentally. I do two things now, and I'll talk a little bit about it, why I think about that mission and vision personally. So I do two things today from a kind of a business standpoint. The most important thing that I do doesn't have anything to do with that. It is being a husband to Nancy, being a father to Kyle and Bethany, being now a grandfather to Kendall and Kellen and Ariadne. And that is the most important thing in my life, obviously. And they're all, and my daughter-in-law, Kristen, and my son-in-law, Evan. I mean, I'm blessed to have such an amazing family, and I want to do anything I can to help all of them. But the kind of the work stuff I do now is I do two things. I do executive coaching, which I really enjoy, helping people kind of just, well, it's kind of like the coaching you do with MMA people, right? A little bit different, but same principles, essentially. And then I really want to help nonprofits. So I do a lot of strategic consulting with nonprofits. And that really is kind of the mission I'm on for, at my age, I'm 66. How many more years of health, mental health, physical health do I have left? I don't know, but I want to make the most of it while I can and work like crazy to stay sharp. And, that's kind of what I'm doing. But, it's interesting when I think about my family, myself, and then also the coaching that I do. You made me remember something you said a little bit ago. I can't remember exactly what it was, but this concept of like, where does it all come from? What's the source of it all? And for me, it is the fundamental question is, who am I and what do I stand for? Who am I and what do I stand for? And I got an executive in Bangkok. I just had a mentoring session with him this morning. I got some in Europe. I've got a number of them here that I'm mentoring. And, these are people that are running big companies and have big responsibilities. And if they start talking to me, I don't care about any of that. Who are you and what do you stand for? Because I think all of it in life emanates from that. And if you don't have that together, which I didn't for a long time, right? I took off when I figured that out, right? And I just think that that's the source of your energy, your passion, your ability to drive change to help others. But you can't help others, you can't love others if you don't know who you are and love yourself. And it may sound wishy-washy, but I believe it. And if you don't know who you are and what you stand for, you cannot, in my mind, reach your full potential. You just can't do it. And one of the ways I talk about it with people is we're human. We like to fool ourselves into the illusion that there's all this stuff we control. I got a theory that we mow lawns and do landscaping because we like to feel like we're in control. Here's the truth. You don't control anything in your life except how you think and how you react to how you feel. That's the only thing we control. There's absolutely nothing else in our lives we control. Tragedies will strike. Hurricanes come. It's life. And my whole thing is it happens to all of us. And if you, I always ask people, what's the rock you stand on? And it's different. The answer is different for every one of us. What's the rock you stand on? For me, it's who am I? What am I all about? Because when that storm comes, I need that rock to stand on. It doesn't reduce the pain or the trauma of whatever hits. It doesn't make the pain go away, but it doesn't necessarily make me get over it faster. But it helps ensure that I will come through it and land on my feet, and maybe even come through it a little bit stronger because I went through it. So that's simple. Those simple questions, who am I and what do I stand for, kind of, I think about that when you ask, like, what's my purpose today? I ask myself that almost every day. I reaffirm for myself who am I and what do I stand for. And when I'm coaching people, like, we talk about that a lot, right? And just reminding everybody of that when the crap hits the fan, and even when it doesn't, just don't lose sight of that, because that's where your power comes from, in my mind.
100%. That is your foundation. That is the way you just finished that. That is where your power comes from. Is bingo. Cut that clip. It's simpler than you think. So many people overcomplicate things. They and like you said, I tell my fighters all the time. I tell she's my fiance now. We just got engaged 2 weeks ago. I said girlfriend earlier. So, but all the time we've had that conversation. I believe that I'm not in control of anything. And when I've tried to talk to her about that, especially a couple of years ago, she's like, "That's a terrifying way to live. What do you mean?" And then when I break it down to her, like, "What do you control?" Like, you don't control anything. And it's once you get through the fears and the misunderstandings and things, it does re-empower you, because you go, you know what I can control? Me.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I provide the best version possible of James Gray into this world, I'm going to get the experience back that is relevant to that energy. If I provide a much less version because I'm super insecure about this, I'm worrying about that, I'm terrified about this, I'm afraid of loss, man, you're shrinking your own power. Fears shrink us.
Yep.
And belief and faith and whatever it is that invigorates you, this strengthens you. It enlarges your impact. It makes you more profound.
Yeah.
So when it's so funny, my fighters will listen to this episode and they're going to crack up because I say these same things to them. Like, you're not in control of things. They're going to be like, this guy is doing executive business coaching, and this is what James is telling us before we beat someone up in a ring. Because there's similarities. As human beings, to achieve potential, there are similarities. And success leaves clues. So many of the most successful people I've interviewed that really have it together, they say the same things. You know what I mean? So at some point, it's like, guys, they're on to something. You might want to look into it. So Jim, this has been an incredible podcast. We've gone an hour and 15 minutes.
Really? Wow, that was fun.
No problem at all. Just anything else you'd like to capture in this moment? If someone listening to this podcast and they're really moved by it and they want to reach out to you, or they know somebody in the corporate world that is like, I would love to have that man do some coaching with our staff or our people or executives. How do they contact you? Just people that you'd like to thank. Anything else you'd like to capture in this moment in time, and then we'll wrap this podcast up.
Yeah, well, who do I want to thank? Well, it's got to start with my number one fan, which is Nancy. I mean, she's, like I said, anything that I've done, I've been blessed to have anything I've accomplished, I should say. I've been blessed to have some great coaches. I got an amazing family that I just described. That is my support network, and I'd be still lost without all of that, for sure. No, I would love for people to contact me because as I told Eric Hippo, we talked a little bit about, because you've interviewed him, and we talked about this a little bit, and it's if there's anything that I can do to help somebody in any way, like, sign me up. That's what I want to do. Can I get my email and my
Any way you want, man.
Yeah. So my email is based on playing college football at Grand Valley State, and my number was 60. So and they're the Lakers. So my email is Lakerboy, LAKERBOY 60JA @gmail.com. Lakerboy60JA @gmail.com. Shoot me a note, reference this podcast, and we can connect. No problem. Would love to do it. So
awesome. Well, truly, it was an honor sitting with you today. I really loved hearing your story. I loved hearing your perspective. And I think you will have a profound impact on the world because you're spreading the right energy. You know what I mean? And I could tell in a quick period of time from meeting you that, like, you can tell people that just radiate good energy. And it's an infectious thing. Just like bad energy is infectious.
Exactly, yeah.
They're both infectious. So you need to be careful about what energy you're putting out. But, man, it was an honor sitting with you today. And we'll wrap this podcast up.
Hey, thank you, and continued success to you, man. You've accomplished some amazing stuff. I love being here in your facility and just seeing this and all the wonderful people you're working with, from little kids in the community to world champions. You got it going, man. You're gonna accomplish great things. You already have, so keep it going. Good for you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks.